The rising sun paints the quiet village in a rosy glow, but something breaks the pre-dawn silence. The scuffle of a footstep, the sound of whispered voices, and the unmistakable noise of swords being drawn from their scabbards. Yes, today on Dragon's Teeth, we're going on a samurai raid. We're going to get straight into the game. I covered the rules recently in my last Samurai upload. This is the Sid and Ken Smith set of rules from 1974, and we've used the basic scenario from that rule set. So we've got two teams, we've got 4 houses on each edge of the board. One of those is selected at random and kept secret. That is the target house for your raid. You have to get across there, plunder it, bring back as much stuff as you can to your own side, and of course prevent the other side doing the same. So we've got 2 teams, 4 players, each controlling 1 squad or unit. We've got Pete and Roger on one side and myself and Steve on the other. And a quick thanks to Mark for lending us the use of his buildings here, and also to Terry for lending us some extra figures. My Dixon's figures didn't arrive in time for the game, so Terry kindly stepped in to help out. The rest of the terrain is mostly stuff that I made, with a few extra bits and pieces here and there. So 4 units then, each of about a dozen figures. We've got 2 or 3 samurai and some Chugan and Ashigaru. Those are my ones just there. And there's Steve's unit with some peasants in the background. I'll explain those in a moment. And here's Pete's unit. It looks like he's just setting those up to defend the house. We've got the daimyo, the commander, sat on a horse there in the middle. That's a central command figure. And then here's Roger's unit just waiting to be set up as well. As you can see, Roger's got a few more archers in his group there. I did mention in my run through of the rules that I weren't sure how these were going to hold up or what tweaks would be needed. Well, straight away we added 1 tweak, because movement of a foot figure is 4 inches, and this is suggested that it be played on a 6x4 table. So we decided to double that, because moving 4 inches was going to take us ages to get anywhere. So we doubled the movement, and we also increased the range of bows as well, because that was quite short. So those were our first 2 tweaks. We decided not to use the optional hidden movement rules, just as this was the first game, just to get things moving quickly. So the next step was to write our unit orders and deploy our troops. As you can see, mine are going to be in the defensive role, so I put them here on the road right in the middle of the village, able to move left or right as required. And we've got Pete setting up his defensive unit on the corner of the table there. I guess that's in response to Steve's attacking unit, which was already advancing on our left hand flank. So if you're not using the hidden movement... Oh, and I should also mention that Pete decided to split his unit, so he's put some figures over on my right flank, possibly an attacking unit, and Roger has put his figures on the road the same as I did. That's going to lead to a big battle at the crossroads very quickly. Basically those 2 units just ran at each other. And there's an overview of the battlefield at the start of turn 1. We're doing simultaneous movement. We're writing just very simple orders for the turn. Obviously each unit has its general orders to follow as well. Move 1 then. Both Roger and I advance our units up the road towards the crossroads. He's got a couple of archers there that are going to start shooting next turn at Steve's unit over on our left flank. Pete's attacking force is heading for the bridge, so it looks like they're going to be going for one of the 2 houses on our right flank here. And Steve's unit are advancing towards our target, which is actually the left hand house in the corner there. Second turn, both Roger and I are advancing to the crossroads. I got there just before him. I was a little closer at the start, I think. So they're sort of there's a staring off contest going on there. And that attacking unit of Pete's is almost at the bridge. Oh, the peasants, by the way, those peasant figures, Mark brought us those in. The thing is, with the rules, samurai don't carry anything. And as we had quite a lot of samurai, we thought we'd just stick some peasants in. Their only job in the game is to carry stuff, basically. They're not combatants or anything. And there's Roger moving up to the crossroads on the third turn now. So, we've got this big melee developed at the crossroads. And one thing we found with this was that figures are actually fairly hard to kill. I thought the rules would be a bit more deadly than they are. And one thing we did find that these melees went on for quite a long time. You have to get 6 wounds to kill a figure. So there were no real quick kills going on. Steve's got some of his archers there who have turned off to help defend the crossroads. And I think his unit is also taking return fire from Roger's archers. But the attacking force he's got there are heading off. They're getting quite close to their house now. Again, they've got some peasants in tow. Pete's raiders crossed the bridge unopposed, so I decided to split off a few figures from my crossroads unit just to try and intercept them. And we can see just across on the other flank there, we've got that sort of archery duel going on between Roger and Steve. 2 sets of archers basically firing at each other there. And here's that big ruck at the crossroads. This basically went on for the whole rest of the game. As I said, it was quite difficult to kill figures. If a figure receives more wounds than it dishes out, they get forced back. If they get forced back twice in a row, on the second time the attacking player can position them for the force back, so they can possibly push them into a wall or a hedge or something. I think the only real kills we had were some of the unarmoured figures. And I think there was one case where one figure was fighting maybe 2 opponents, so they were eventually killed. But it did take quite a while. And it was evenly matched as well, so a fairly indecisive encounter from that respect. And similar with the archery duel as well, after I think 3 or 4 rounds of firing at each other, there was 1 archer killed on each side. And that was pretty much it. Of course, we were looking at morale as well. When a figure receives its 3rd wound, for example, it rolls for morale. I think apart from one case where a figure had to withdraw, every figure made its morale roll. And of course, samurai don't roll morale anyway. So having crossed the bridge, a few of Pete's raiders turned off to intercept my defenders. And the rest of his raiding unit had a clear run at their target house. Oh, and I should just mention as well, when we changed the movement rate, we doubled the movement rate, we also increased the zone of control for the commander of a unit as well. I think we only had one example of someone moving out that zone of control, so that rule worked pretty well. Meanwhile, over on the left flank, Steve's attacking unit have reached their target. The defenders have moved across, but they are outnumbered. You see they've taken up position behind that fence, which actually gave both sides a minus during melee. And again, that melee went the same as the crossroads one. A bit of back and forward. I don't think anyone was actually killed. A few wounds taken. Those peasants aren't dead. They're just having a rest. They're saving themselves for their labours. Hopefully, if their samurai break through. So again, a couple of turns of melee, fairly inconclusive. Same situation again over on the right flank with my defenders there, and Pete's raiders who have come across the bridge. Bit of pushing backwards and forwards, a few wounds taken, but nothing really decisive. And that archery battle continues in the middle. And there's just another shot of that melee at the crossroads again. I think I was probably starting to get the worst of it. I think Roger would have eventually won that one. The daimyo looks on. So the situation at the full-time whistle then was Steve's raiders were at the house. Maybe another couple of moves, they'd have broken through the defenders and got in. The crossroads melee was still going on. As I said, I think I was probably going to lose that in the long run. And Pete's raiders had actually made it to the house and were busy plundering. They just had that one archer there covering them, so I think they would have got away scot-free. There we go then, that's our Samurai Skirmish game at Bedford Gladiators, using that set of rules that I think they haven't seen light of day for maybe 35, 40 years, something like that. As I mentioned when I did my review of these rules, I was very interested to see how a set of rules from 1974 were going to stand up to modern play, and by and large I think they did pretty okay. As I said, straight away we had to tweak a couple of things. The movement rate was too small, we doubled that, and the corresponding bow range and zones of control. But once we got into it, the game moved fairly quickly, given that it was the first time we'd used these rules, or at least the first time for a long time. So there was quite a lot of referring back to them, as is usual. The melees would have gone a lot quicker if we'd have done them simultaneously. Instead, we sort of did them one at a time so everyone could see the mechanics. Next time round, of course, each player will do their melees individually and separately, or they'll all be done simultaneously, so that will certainly speed things up. Those are the good points of these rules, I think. Easy to understand, fast flowing game. On the downside, as I mentioned in the report there, melee seemed to go on and on and on and wasn't particularly conclusive. I mean, we might say that that is realistic in terms of individuals fighting each other, but it did feel like we're just going to have a big scrum in the middle, and that will take 8 rounds maybe to resolve that, and whoever's left is the winner. Another interesting thing that is, although in the rules we get points for different types of troop, now obviously samurai and ashigaru are classed differently, but it does make a point of saying, you know, samurai armed with a sword, samurai armed with a spear, and so on. But in the actual rules, in the actual melee, the weapon that is used makes no difference at all. So it'd be nice to have something of that in, perhaps to add a little more flavour. In terms of unit size, we had one player controlling about 12 figures. I would say that's at the top end of manageability, particularly when you get into all those smaller melees. Just by contrast with my fantasy skirmish rules, that's going to be based around one player character and 4 or 5 minions or underlings or retinue. Though the combat in that is going to be a little more inclined towards your typical RPG type combat. The morale seemed to work okay. It seemed to be quite difficult to get people to actually rout. I say we had one lone ashigaru wandered off and suddenly went, oh, I better get back to my unit. But with that idea of the samurai never testing morale, then it keeps everything pretty solid. The simultaneous movement works fine. That's something I think I'm going to keep for my fantasy game. Just a very simple order needs to be written. If the whole unit is moving in one direction, you just need to write one order for the whole unit, right? Doesn't need to be individual figures. So that aspect works fine. Quite a novelty using average dice again. It's been a long time since I used those. Not something I'm planning on using for anything else. With D20s and percentage dice and everything else nowadays, I think they're a much better way to resolve things. And not only did Terry bring some figures down for me, he also brought some rule sets for me to look at. So we've got a sample here including The Way of the Warrior, The Road to Osaka, Killer Katanas, great title, and there's a few others. I think these are more like scenario booklets. The Age of the Country at War, I think they're more sort of large scale rules. But anyway, I'm going to have a read through those and some other rules that I've downloaded as well. There's a few available on the internet, of course. And I think I'm probably going to use these Sid Smith rules as a basis, because I think at core there's a good workable set of rules in there, and then add in a few various tweaks and bits and pieces. Also, I'm going to sit down and work out some better scenarios as well. The raid on the houses is fine, but as I said at the start, unless you're using hidden movement, it's obvious straight away pretty much which house is the target, which house your enemy is going for. So that's something I'll be doing over the next couple of weeks. My Dixon's figures actually arrived this morning as well, so I've got some extra figures now to use. There's, I think, 18 Ronin in here, and some samurai and a few other bits and pieces. I've also got some samurai buildings to print out and to put onto card and make as well. At the moment, that's a lot cheaper than buying sort of resin or MDF buildings, of course. So that's going to do for now. So yeah, we're going to organise another game down at Bedford Gladiators, and I'll get those extra figures painted up, tweak the rules, and also set up a better scenario. Okay, that's it for today then. Hope you enjoyed that skirmish. Thanks again to Pete, Roger and Steve, and of course to Mark and Terry as well. If you have any comments, questions or suggestions, do let me know. I'd be interested if you do Samurai Skirmishing, which rules do you use, or do you have a homebrew set? And of course, as always, please do like, share and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I'll see you soon.